I thought surprising my parents with an $8,000 luxury Hawaiian vacation would be the perfect way to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. They had never traveled beyond our home state of Washington, working tirelessly to provide for me and my sister Sarah. When I received my biggest bonus yet as a senior software engineer in Seattle, I knew exactly how to spend it. My heart swelled with anticipation as I planned every detail of their dream getaway. I thought it would be the perfect surprise until I discovered what they did behind my back. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And please hit that like button if you have ever planned something special for your parents. Trust me, you will not believe the betrayal that came next, and how I made sure they learned a lesson they would never forget. The idea came to me on a rainy Tuesday evening in September. I had just finished reviewing my quarterly bonus statement, the largest I had ever received, thanks to successfully leading a complex software integration project. As I sat in my downtown Seattle apartment watching the rain streak down my windows, I thought about my parents, Michael and Linda, both 58 and 55 respectively. Dad had spent decades as a mechanic, his hands permanently stained with grease, while Mom worked as a receptionist at a busy medical clinic. They had sacrificed everything for Sarah and me, never taking a real vacation in all their years of marriage. I remembered countless conversations where they would mention Hawaii, usually while watching travel shows on television. Mom would sigh wistfully at the pristine beaches and crystal-clear waters, while Dad would joke that maybe someday they could afford to visit paradise. That someday had never come. Every spare dollar went toward our educations, our needs, our dreams. They had postponed their own honeymoon indefinitely, claiming they were too busy with young children and mounting responsibilities. The Grand Wailea Maui Resort caught my attention during my online research. The oceanfront suite overlooked a private stretch of beach complete with a marble bathroom and spacious balcony. I spent 3 weeks comparing packages, reading reviews, and crafting the perfect itinerary. The 10-day package included couples spa treatments, a sunset dinner cruise, a helicopter tour over volcanic landscapes, and enough leisure time to simply enjoy being pampered for once in their lives. I coordinated with Sarah, who taught 3rd grade at an elementary school in Tacoma. She seemed enthusiastic about the surprise, helping me create alibis and distractions to keep our parents from suspecting anything. We agreed that a family dinner at their house would provide the perfect setting for the big reveal. Sarah suggested a Sunday evening when everyone would be relaxed and together. The week before the planned announcement, I purchased Hawaiian travel guides, a beautiful photo album for their vacation memories, and even a disposable camera decorated with tropical flowers. My excitement was overwhelming. I imagined their faces when they realized their dream vacation was not just a fantasy anymore. This would be my way of thanking them for all their years of selfless dedication to our family. Sunday dinner arrived with the comforting aroma of Mom's famous pot roast, filling their modest suburban home. Dad looked tired from his week at the auto shop, rubbing his lower back as he settled into his worn recliner. Mom bustled around the kitchen, refusing help as always, insisting that cooking for her family brought her joy. Sarah arrived fashionably late, carrying a bouquet of flowers that seemed oddly formal for a casual dinner. After we finished eating, I retrieved the special envelope I had prepared. My hands trembled slightly as I placed it on the dining table. The printed itinerary inside represented months of planning and nearly every penny of my bonus money. I had even included a handwritten letter explaining how much their sacrifices had meant to me over the years. The silence that followed their reading was deafening. Mom's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the resort photographs. Dad removed his reading glasses and cleaned them twice before looking at the documents again. Finally, Mom whispered that they could not possibly accept such an expensive gift. $8,000 represented more money than they typically saw in several months of combined income. I insisted that they deserved this luxury, that I had already paid for everything and could not cancel without significant financial penalties. Dad tried to calculate the cost in his head, converting the total into hours of labor at his shop. The math overwhelmed him. Mom worried about missing work, about the plants needing water, about leaving their familiar routine for such an extended period. Gradually, their protests softened into wonder. They began asking practical questions about flight times and weather patterns. Mom admitted she had never owned a swimsuit that was not purchased from a discount store. Dad wondered if his old camera would work properly in tropical humidity. By the end of the evening, they were cautiously excited, already discussing what they would need to pack for their first real vacation. The following week brought a flurry of activity as my parents prepared for their upcoming adventure. Mom spent her lunch breaks shopping for vacation clothes, calling me with questions about resort dress codes and appropriate footwear for beach walks. Dad researched Hawaiian history at the local library, checking out books about volcanic formation and Polynesian culture. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself looking forward to their departure almost as much as they were. Sarah, however, seemed to grow more distant with each passing day. Her text responses became shorter and less frequent. When I called to discuss final preparations, she gave brief, distracted answers that seemed oddly evasive. I attributed her behavior to the stress of a new school year beginning, knowing how demanding her teaching position could be during the autumn semester. The first red flag appeared during a casual visit to my parents' house the following Thursday. I had stopped by to deliver some travel-sized toiletries I thought Mom might need. As I approached the front door, I could hear her voice through the window, speaking animatedly on the telephone. The words that caught my attention made my blood run cold. Sarah would absolutely love those spa treatments. The massage packages looked divine. When I entered the house, Mom quickly ended her conversation and greeted me with what seemed like forced cheerfulness. I asked casually who she had been talking to, and she deflected my question with vague mentions of sharing vacation excitement with friends. Something in her tone struck me as dishonest, but I pushed away my growing unease, choosing instead to focus on the positive aspects of their upcoming trip. The weekend before their scheduled departure, I decided to surprise them with personalized luggage tags, featuring their names and the resort address. I arrived at their house unannounced, using my spare key to enter through the back door, as I had done countless times throughout my childhood. The sight that greeted me in the living room stopped me in my tracks. A large pink suitcase sat open on the coffee table, partially packed with clothing that clearly did not belong to either of my parents. The garments were too small for Mom and too feminine for Dad. Tropical print dresses in size medium hung neatly on hangers nearby. A pile of resort wear still bore price tags from expensive boutiques that my parents would never frequent. When my parents emerged from the kitchen, they found me standing motionless beside the mysterious luggage. The guilty expressions on their faces confirmed my worst suspicions before they spoke a single word. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably while Mom twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I recognized from childhood moments when she was caught in uncomfortable situations. The confession came slowly, delivered with the kind of careful phrasing people use when they know they are in the wrong, but hope to minimize the damage. They explained that they had been thinking about the trip extensively, and it occurred to them that 3 people would not cost significantly more than 2. Sarah had been working so hard lately, dealing with stress from her new position and a recent difficult breakup. She deserved some relaxation and tropical sunshine. My heart sank as the full scope of their deception became clear. This was not about adding Sarah to their romantic getaway. They had made the decision to replace me entirely with my younger sister. The trip I had planned and paid for, the surprise I had crafted with such love and attention, was being given to someone else without my knowledge or consent. Their reasoning felt like a knife twisting in an old wound. Sarah needed the vacation more than I did because I had a successful career and financial independence. I was always so responsible, so capable of taking care of myself. Surely I would understand that family meant sharing resources and opportunities. They had discussed this arrangement with Sarah for over a week, assuming my agreement was automatic rather than necessary. The familiar pattern of favoritism crashed over me like a cold wave. Throughout our childhood, I had been the dependable one while Sarah received special treatment and extra attention. I worked part-time jobs during high school while Sarah focused on athletics and social activities. I paid my own way through college while Sarah received full parental support for her education and living expenses. Even as adults, my achievements were downplayed while Sarah's struggles were met with sympathy and financial assistance. Standing in that living room surrounded by evidence of their secret planning, I realized that my parents had never learned to appreciate my contributions to our family. They took my generosity for granted, assuming it would continue regardless of how they treated me. The $8,000 vacation was not seen as a precious gift requiring gratitude, but as a resource to be redistributed according to their preferences. The confrontation with Sarah that evening revealed the true depth of the betrayal. I called her immediately after leaving my parents' house, my hands shaking with anger and hurt. Her defensive tone confirmed that she had been actively participating in the deception, rather than simply benefiting from it passively. She made no attempt to deny her involvement or express remorse for the pain it caused me. Her justifications were even more hurtful than my parents' explanations. According to Sarah, I made enough money to plan my own vacations whenever I wanted them. The Hawaiian trip should be viewed as payback for all the things our parents had done for me over the years. I was being selfish by expecting to control how my gift was used once it was given. Besides, she had already taken time off work and purchased expensive resort clothing in preparation for the trip. The casual cruelty of her words left me speechless. Sarah felt entitled not just to the vacation itself, but to my acceptance of their decision. In her mind, my role as the responsible, successful sister meant that I should gracefully step aside whenever she wanted something I had provided. My feelings and preferences were irrelevant compared to her desires and needs. The next day brought another painful conversation when my parents arrived at my apartment unannounced. They had come to manage what they saw as my unreasonable reaction to their reasonable request. The manipulation tactics they employed were familiar from childhood disagreements, but their effectiveness had diminished now that I recognized them for what they were. Mom cried as she explained how disappointed they were in my selfishness. They had raised me to be generous and family-oriented, not petty and controlling. Sarah was going through such a difficult period with her recent breakup and work stress. As her older sister, I should want to help her heal rather than standing in the way of her happiness. They could not understand why I was being so dramatic about what amounted to a simple change in travel companions. Dad appealed to my logical nature, suggesting that my anger was disproportionate to the situation. The vacation would be equally enjoyable regardless of who accompanied them. The money was already spent, the arrangements already made. Fighting about details would only create family discord and ruin everyone's experience. I should be mature enough to put the family's happiness above my personal disappointment. The breaking point came when I realized this pattern had defined my entire relationship with my family. Memories flooded back of high school graduation when my parents missed my valedictorian speech to attend one of Sarah's soccer games. During college, every academic achievement I earned was overshadowed by whatever crisis Sarah was navigating that semester. Career milestones that should have been celebrated were treated as expected outcomes, while Sarah's smallest accomplishments received enthusiastic praise and tangible rewards. That evening, Sarah sent me a photograph of herself trying on a new bikini, along with a caption expressing her excitement about the upcoming Hawaiian adventure. The image felt like a final insult, a visual representation of how little my feelings mattered to any of them. Shortly afterward, my parents sent a group text message asking me to be mature about the situation and stop causing unnecessary drama for the family. As I lay awake that night wrestling with hurt and anger, I came to a profound realization about respect and relationships. Love without respect was not really love at all, but a form of manipulation that relied on guilt and obligation rather than genuine appreciation. My family had learned to take my generosity for granted because I had never required them to earn or maintain my goodwill through their actions. The decision to take back control of my gift did not come from a desire for revenge, but from a need to establish boundaries that protected my self-worth. If they wanted to make decisions about my $8,000 vacation without consulting me, then I would make my own decisions about whether that vacation would actually happen. The power to give also included the power to withdraw when the gift was not valued appropriately. Monday morning arrived with surprising clarity about what I needed to do. I called the Grand Wailea Resort first, explaining my situation to a sympathetic customer service representative who admitted that family disputes over vacation plans happened more frequently than most people realized. The cancellation policy was strict, but they were able to refund 60% of the total cost when I explained the circumstances honestly. The airline was less accommodating, keeping the full cost of the tickets, as they had been purchased under a non-refundable fare. However, the tour companies were surprisingly understanding, refunding the helicopter excursion and dinner cruise completely when I provided the confirmation numbers and explained that the travelers would not be arriving as scheduled. Each successful cancellation felt empowering, like reclaiming a piece of my dignity that had been stolen. By the end of the day, I had recovered $6,200 of my original $8,000 investment. The remaining $1,800 felt like an expensive but worthwhile lesson in family dynamics and personal boundaries. I transferred the recovered funds into my savings account and prepared for the inevitable explosion when my family discovered what I had done. The eruption came at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport the following Friday morning. My parents and Sarah arrived for their 7:30 a.m. flight to Maui, only to be told during check-in that their reservations had been canceled and no tickets existed under their names. The frantic phone calls began immediately with increasingly hysterical voices, demanding explanations for what they assumed was a computer error or travel agency mistake. I answered my phone calmly when Dad called from the airport, his voice shaking with confusion and rising anger. When I explained that I had personally canceled all the reservations, the silence on the other end stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Then came an explosion of accusations and threats, with Sarah's voice shrieking in the background about how I had ruined everything and embarrassed her in front of the friends she had told about the trip. My response was delivered with a calm that surprised even me. I explained that they had wanted to make decisions about my gift without consulting me, so I had made my own decision about whether the gift would actually be given. The trip was intended for parents who appreciated and respected their daughter's generosity, not for people who felt entitled to redistribute expensive gifts according to their preferences. The family pressure campaign began within hours of their return from the airport. Aunts, uncles, and grandparents received carefully crafted versions of the story that portrayed me as a vindictive daughter who had cruelly disappointed her loving family. Phone calls and text messages arrived throughout the weekend, urging me to reconsider my harsh position and make amends for the pain I had caused. I refused to engage with the drama or defend my actions to extended family members who had not witnessed the years of favoritism and disrespect that led to this moment. Instead, I maintained my boundary with simple, consistent responses. The vacation had been my gift to give, and when it was not appreciated appropriately, I chose to withdraw it. Anyone who wanted to understand my perspective was welcome to have that conversation, but I would not be manipulated through guilt or family pressure. My coworkers and friends were overwhelmingly supportive when I shared the story with them. Several people admitted they had experienced similar family dynamics, where their success was taken for granted, while less successful siblings received special treatment and assistance. Their validation helped me recognize that my situation was not unique, and that my response had been both reasonable and necessary. The unexpected consequences began to unfold over the following weeks. Dad called me privately to express something that resembled genuine remorse. He admitted they had not realized how their decision would make me feel, and that they had probably been unfair in their treatment of both daughters over the years. The conversation was awkward and incomplete, but it represented the first time either parent had acknowledged the pattern of favoritism that had shaped our family dynamics. Sarah's reaction was more complex and took longer to develop. Initially, she remained angry and defiant, insisting that I had overreacted to a minor change in travel plans. However, as weeks passed and the reality of her behavior became clearer, she began to recognize how her sense of entitlement had damaged our relationship. The growth was slow and sometimes inconsistent, but it was genuine. I used the refunded money to plan a solo trip to Vancouver, spending a long weekend hiking in the mountains and enjoying spa treatments that I chose for myself. The experience of complete autonomy after years of family obligation was liberating. I discovered that I genuinely enjoyed my own company and did not need external validation to feel worthy of nice experiences. The healing process was gradual and required consistent maintenance of the boundaries I had established. I continued to love my family, but I learned to distinguish between love and enabling behavior. When they asked for help or support, I evaluated each request based on whether it came from a place of mutual respect or assumed obligation. The quality of our interactions improved dramatically once they learned that my generosity had limits and conditions. Months later, a genuine reconciliation began to take shape. My parents planned their own modest vacation to the Oregon coast, paying for it themselves, and inviting both Sarah and me to join them for one day of their trip. The gesture was small but meaningful, representing their understanding that relationships required mutual effort and appreciation, rather than one-sided sacrifice. The profound life lesson that emerged from this painful experience changed my approach to all my relationships. I learned that generosity without respect is actually manipulation, creating an unhealthy dynamic where the giver becomes resentful and the receiver becomes entitled. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to say no, forcing them to confront their own behavior and develop better patterns of interaction. Self-respect, I discovered, teaches other people how to treat you. When you consistently accept poor treatment, you communicate that such behavior is acceptable and will be tolerated indefinitely. When you establish and maintain firm boundaries, you create space for healthier, more balanced relationships to develop. That canceled Hawaiian vacation gave me something far more valuable than any tropical paradise could have provided. It gave me my voice back and the courage to use it when it matters most. The lesson was expensive, but it was worth every penny of the $1,800 I lost in the process. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family took your generosity for granted? Let me know in the comments how you handled it, because these dynamics are more common than we like to admit. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding your voice. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to stand up for yourself, even when family pressure tells you otherwise. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your kindness should never come at the expense of your self-respect. Until next time, keep believing in your worth, and never let anyone take your generosity for granted.